Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something we often overlook: time. More specifically, the seconds that tick by quietly, the ones we don't usually pay attention to. We think in hours, days, maybe even years. We tend to think of our lives in terms of grand moments: that job interview, that graduation day, that promotion, the day you finally fall in love or experience heartbreak. We wait for those moments like they're checkpoints, assuming that's when we become who we are. But that's not how it works. Those milestones are important, sure, but they're only reflections, echoes of what's already been happening beneath the surface. Because in reality, your character is not formed in the spotlight, it's formed in the shadows. It's formed when no one's watching, in the quiet, in the subtle, in the seconds. That second when you decide to speak honestly rather than manipulate the truth. That matters. That changes you. That molds you into someone just a little more aligned with what you could be. And it's not just about morality in a religious or cultural sense. It's about your orientation toward the world. Are you shaping yourself into someone trustworthy, someone competent, someone courageous? Or are you letting yourself slide inch by inch into resentment, laziness, dishonesty, and regret? What we underestimate is the cumulative weight of small decisions. Think about it. You have thousands of moments a day to choose. Do you scroll for 10 more minutes, or do you start the thing you said you cared about? Do you brush past someone in pain, or do you stop and actually see them? Do you take responsibility for that small error at work, or do you blame someone else just slightly with a casual twist of words? These choices define you. They aren't neutral. They lean you in one direction or another. You are always becoming something, and every small act nudges you toward that destination. And the scary thing, maybe the tragic thing, is how easily we believe that we can cut corners in the little things. We rationalize it. We say it's not a big deal. It's just this one. But once becomes a pattern, and patterns become identity. You don't become a liar all at once. You lie a little and then a little more. And one day you wake up and the truth costs you more than you're willing to pay, because you haven't practiced carrying it. You don't become brave in a single leap. You choose to stand up in the smallest of moments. You say what you think. You act when it's easier to retreat. And with every second like that, you train your soul to handle what the world throws at you. The idea that your smallest actions matter is both terrifying and liberating. It means there's no such thing as an insignificant moment, but it also means that you're never stuck. You can start now, this second, right now. You can orient yourself toward what's true, what's meaningful, what's good. And that doesn't mean you'll get it right all the time. You won't. You're human, you're fallible, but you can move in the right direction. And the right direction starts with small intentional choices. I often tell people, and I believe this deeply, if you want to improve your life, don't start by overhauling everything. Start by noticing, become aware. Pay attention to how you spend your seconds. When do you hesitate? When do you avoid? When do you lie? When do you cut yourself off from growth because it's uncomfortable? Trace those patterns, not with guilt or self-loathing, but with curiosity. Because your habits, your automatic responses are trained. And what is trained can be untrained. What is unconscious can be brought into the light. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if for one day you used every second well, not perfectly, just well, with intention, with a bit of humility, with honesty. You wake up and you make your bed, not because someone told you to, but because order is better than chaos, and you're starting your day with something under control. You sit down with someone and you listen, really listen. You respond thoughtfully. You ask a question that matters. You choose to exercise rather than escape into the couch. You open the book instead of numbing yourself. You say what you believe, gently but firmly, instead of staying silent to please everyone. That's not just a better day, that's a better life. And not because you made some grand gesture, but because you made about 10,000 tiny decisions that were just a bit better than the alternative. You added a little more strength, a little more truth, a little more discipline with each one. And that's how you become someone you respect, someone others can depend on, someone who can carry responsibility without crumbling under its weight. And don't make the mistake of thinking this is about being perfect. It's not. This is about being honest with yourself, first and foremost. Because when you know the weight of a second, you start to see yourself differently. You stop saying, I'm just this way. You realize, no, you're not. You're this way because of repeated decisions, and you can be otherwise. That's the hope. That's the responsibility. Because once you understand that every second is a vote for who you're becoming, you no longer get to say you're powerless. You have the pen. You're writing the story, slowly, steadily, second by second. And every time you choose courage over fear, discipline over impulse, compassion over apathy, you're writing something better. You're proving to yourself that you're not just a product of your past, but a participant in your future. It's not easy, of course not. But the alternative, letting yourself drift, is far worse. Drifting doesn't take you somewhere meaningful. It takes you somewhere dark, somewhere shallow, somewhere small. And you're not meant for that. You're meant for something high. And to get there, you don't need to make a leap. You need to take the next second seriously. People often say they don't have time. They say it as if time is something that slips away from them, like a thief in the night, as if they're victims of its cruelty. But time doesn't run from you. You spend it, consciously or not, you spend it. And how you spend it reveals everything. It tells the truth you won't speak. It lays bare your values. It strips away your illusions. Time is the great revealer, the mirror you can't turn away from. Every second, every minute is an honest record of what matters to you. Now that's a hard thing to accept, because we're very good at telling ourselves stories. We say we care about our health, and then we binge garbage and avoid sleep. We say family is our top priority, and then we can't seem to lift our eyes from the phone when our children are speaking. We talk about wanting to achieve something meaningful, something lasting, and then spend hour after hour watching content that numbs us instead of challenges us. And I'm not saying this to guilt trip anyone. That's not the point. The point is that your time doesn't lie. You can talk all you want about what you believe, what you dream of, what you intend to do, but your calendar, your attention, your habits, they tell the real story. And this isn't just about productivity. It's not about squeezing every ounce of efficiency out of your day as if you're a machine. It's about alignment. It's about integrity. Do your actions reflect your values? Do your seconds reflect what you say matters most? Because if they don't, then you're out of sync. And when you live out of sync with what you truly care about, that's where the suffering starts. That's where anxiety and regret and resentment begin to fester. You know something is off, even if you can't articulate it. You feel that discomfort, that misalignment, because your behavior is betraying your beliefs. Now, of course, life is complicated. You're not always going to be able to live in perfect accordance with your ideals. You have responsibilities. You have limits. You're not omnipotent. But what matters is the trend, the trajectory. Are you inching closer to the life you say you want? Or are you drifting further from it while clinging to excuses that feel comfortable but keep you small? And here's where it gets interesting. The deeper you look at how you spend your time, the more you start to see your fears. Because it's not that people are lazy, not fundamentally. It's that they're afraid. They avoid the work that matters because it demands something of them. It demands discomfort, vulnerability, uncertainty. So instead, they fill their seconds with noise. Distraction becomes a shield. The phone, the mindless entertainment, the endless scrolling. That's not just boredom. That's a fortress built against the terror of significance. Because if you really face what matters to you, if you really commit to it, then you can fail, then you have to change, then you have to sacrifice, and we're wired to avoid all of that if we can. But what's the cost of avoidance? What's the price of misusing your seconds? The answer is your life. That's the currency, because your life is time. You don't lose it all at once. You lose it in fragments, in missed opportunities, in late starts, in just 5 more minutes. And each time you do, you reinforce a story that your purpose isn't urgent, that your growth can wait, that what you truly care about is somehow negotiable. But it isn't. It never was. I've spoken to so many people, students, professionals, parents, artists, who feel a deep sense of dissatisfaction with their life. And often, the dissatisfaction is not rooted in failure. It's rooted in neglect. They've neglected what matters. And that neglect wasn't a one-time decision. It was accumulated, second by second, in ways they didn't even notice. That's the tragedy. Not that people aim too high and miss, but that they aim low, or worse, don't aim at all, and hit. They coast, they survive, they maintain, and they do it while convincing themselves that there's still plenty of time to change. But the problem with plenty of time is that it encourages apathy. It seduces you into thinking you're immortal, that you can squander today, and somehow tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow is built from the seconds you use today. And once those seconds are gone, they're gone. They don't return. You don't get refunds on time. And when you finally realize how much of it you've spent on things that didn't matter, that didn't challenge you, or move you, or reflect your deepest values, that's a bitter moment. That's the kind of realization that can either destroy you or wake you up. So what's the alternative? The alternative is awareness, radical awareness. You start asking yourself honestly, what am I choosing right now? What does this moment say about who I am and what I value? And you do it not to become neurotic or obsessed with perfection, but to become conscious, because you can't change what you don't see. And once you see the patterns, the distortions, the gaps between your stated values and your lived values, then you can do something about it. You can start realigning your life, not by overhauling everything at once, but by adjusting the seconds. You choose to make one moment matter. You close the tab that pulls you away from your goals. You say no to the thing that drains you. You say yes to the work that scares you. You call the person you've been avoiding. You write the page. You take the walk. You apologize. You begin again. That's where it starts. And don't underestimate how powerful that is. You do that consistently, and your life will begin to transform, not all at once, but irreversibly, because you're building a foundation made of actions, not words, and people will notice, not because you told them you changed, but because you're living differently. You're honoring your time. You're walking in alignment, and that creates a kind of peace that can't be, a confidence that isn't arrogance, it's integrity. So when you hear someone say, I just didn't have the time, remember, time isn't something you have, it's something you choose. Every second is a declaration of what you believe is worth your energy. And that truth, it's not easy, but it is freeing, because it means your future isn't random. It's being written in real time, with every second you spend.
One of the most deceptive ideas people carry is this notion that not acting is neutral, that delay is a pause, a kind of moral holding space where nothing really happens until you're ready. But that's a lie. Delay is not neutral. Delay is not passive. Delay is a choice, and more than that, it's a decision that speaks just as loudly about who you are as any action does. Every time you hesitate when you know what must be done, you're not just avoiding the task, you're shaping your character, you're training yourself to retreat, to doubt, to stall, and those seconds add up. Over time, they become your identity. People think decisions are only made with clarity and conviction, but in reality, most decisions are made through hesitation, through indecision, through silence. And what's frightening about that is that you can spend years drifting, paralyzed by your own postponement, telling yourself you're still thinking, still preparing, still waiting for the right time. But the truth is, the right time rarely shows up. It's constructed through responsibility, through movement, through courage, not waited for like a train that eventually pulls into the station. And this waiting game, this delay, it's not harmless. It corrodes you because deep down you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know there's something calling to you, something difficult, maybe even terrifying, but meaningful. And the longer you ignore it, the louder the internal dissonance becomes. That's where resentment takes root, not toward others, but toward yourself, because you see yourself failing to answer the call, and it eats at you quietly, consistently. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have everything figured out. It doesn't mean you rush blindly into every opportunity, but it does mean that you can't afford to lie to yourself about what waiting really is. Because waiting is often just fear disguised as strategy. It's passivity pretending to be wisdom. And people who give in to that voice, who wait too long, they don't usually look back with pride. They look back with regret, not because they tried and failed, but because they never even stepped forward. And this isn't some vague motivational idea. This is psychological. Every time you delay action in favor of comfort, you reinforce a neural pathway, a behavioral pattern that makes it harder to act next time. You're conditioning yourself toward paralysis. You're teaching your brain to value short-term relief over long-term purpose, and that's a dangerous game to play. Because once that becomes habitual, even the smallest step begins to feel overwhelming. You become the kind of person who needs certainty before every move, and life just doesn't offer that. Not if you're aiming at something meaningful. See, this is why the seconds matter. Because in the moment of decision, when you feel that pull toward action and choose to ignore it, that second defines you. It's subtle. It feels like nothing, but it becomes everything. And then what? Then days pass, then months, then years, and the life you could have lived fades into an abstract fantasy. You end up haunted not by what you did, but by what you didn't do. That's the weight of delay. It creates an alternate version of you that exists only in theory, someone you could have been if only you'd started when you knew you should have. But there's another side to this. There's hope, and it's found in the same place the damage is done, in the second. Because the same way delay can define you, so can action. 1 second of movement, of choice, of courage, it can disrupt the whole pattern. You don't need to conquer the mountain today. You just need to take a step. You need to prove to yourself that you can begin, that you're not a victim of hesitation, that you still possess agency, because you do. You always do. And that's the key. You're not paralyzed because of a lack of options. You're paralyzed because of a lack of belief. You've allowed the fear of discomfort to dictate the terms of your life. And that fear, if left unchecked, it will demand everything from you. It will rob you of opportunity, of vitality, of meaning. And it will do it so quietly, so politely, that you won't even notice until it's too late. That's why you have to fight it in the moment it shows up. Not with perfection, but with presence, with awareness, with a willingness to say, not today, not this second. This time I move. And let's be honest, many people delay not because they're lazy, but because they want certainty. They want guarantee. They want to know that if they act, it will work. But that's not how this works. That's not how anything meaningful works. Life offers no assurance of success, only the possibility of it.
And that possibility, however small, is always worth more than the dead certainty of regret. You have to risk failure. You have to be willing to stumble, because the alternative is worse, far worse. The alternative is atrophy, psychological, emotional, even spiritual atrophy. The kind that sets in when you've ignored your potential for too long. You lose your sharpness, you lose your edge. You become domesticated by comfort. And then you start to convince yourself that this is all you're capable of, that your best years are behind you, that you're too late, too tired, too damaged. But that's not true. That's the voice of delay, again trying to lull you back to sleep, and you can't listen to it. You have to wake up. You have to decide that the next second will be different, not later, not tomorrow. Now. And you don't need some grand gesture to do it. You just need movement. Small, deliberate movement in the direction of what matters. Make the call, write the page, go to the gym, start the project, say the thing that needs to be said. It doesn't matter how small the step is. What matters is that you took it, that you interrupted the inertia. Because once you do, once you prove to yourself that change is possible, it becomes easier to do it again. That's how momentum builds, not in one leap, but in dozens of micro decisions, in reclaiming the seconds that you once surrendered. And the beautiful thing about time is that it keeps offering you chances. Every second is a new opportunity to decide who you are. And the question is always the same. Will you delay again, or will you move? Will you hide behind fear, or will you act with courage, not later, now? People often behave as if time is something external, like it's just there, flowing past them, passive and indifferent, watching without consequence, as if it's a backdrop to life, a setting that records but never responds. But time is far more involved than that. It's not a passive witness. It doesn't just observe what you do. Time measures it. It remembers it. It shapes you in response to it. It's not neutral. It's not forgetful. It's a silent judge, and you're being evaluated constantly by the way you engage with it. Now, that might sound like an overwhelming idea, and maybe it should be, because the way you treat your time is one of the clearest indicators of how seriously you take your life. Not just your goals or your plans, but your very existence, your potential, your relationships, your responsibilities. Time demands reverence. And when you treat it carelessly, it doesn't just drift away. It takes something from you in return. Your confidence, your momentum, your sense of meaning. You don't lose time like you lose spare change. You pay for it with your future. And that's the thing. People imagine that not doing something today just leaves them where they are, that they can pick it up tomorrow or next week and start fresh, clean slate, no damage done. But that's a fantasy. Because time doesn't wait, and it doesn't pause just because you're not ready. When you don't move, time does, and it takes pieces of you with it. So when you return later, it's not to the same moment. The opportunity isn't quite as fresh. Your energy isn't quite the same. The path is slightly overgrown. That delay has cost you something, and time again has judged the choice. And what's so dangerous about that, what's so insidious, is that this judgment isn't always dramatic. It's not loud. It doesn't come with sirens or alarms. It comes in whispers, in a slight loss of belief in yourself, in the subtle erosion of your reputation, in the creeping sense that you've fallen just a little behind. These are not punishments, they're consequences, natural, built-in, irreversible. Time doesn't need to punish you, it just continues without you. You can see this when you look around at lives half-lived, projects half-finished, people filled with regret, not because they tried and failed, but because they stood still while time moved past them. And now there's a gap between who they are and who they know they could have been. That's a judgment, not from society, not from others, but from time itself.
Because time remembers what you didn't do. It tallies the cost of inaction, and eventually it makes you. And yet, despite this, most people live as though they have unlimited time, as though each hour they waste can simply be replaced by another down the road. They speak of someday as if it's a certainty, as if life is generous enough to hold the door open forever. But it's not. You don't know how many seconds you have left. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to live intentionally, to make each one count. Because each second is not just a measure of time. It's a moment of accountability. Every breath you take is a silent verdict. What are you doing with the time you've been given? And this isn't just about productivity. It's not about hustle. It's about meaning. The more meaningless your life becomes, the easier it is to waste your time. And the more you waste your time, the harder it becomes to find meaning. That's the cycle. That's the trap. But if you reverse it, if you start treating time as sacred, as something valuable, as something worthy of your respect, then meaning begins to return. Because suddenly, the seconds aren't slipping past you. They're working with you. They become the building blocks of a life that matters. And that's where responsibility comes in. Because if time is judging you, then your response must be one of accountability. You don't get to blame the clock. You don't get to blame the schedule. You don't get to say, there wasn't enough time. When the truth is, you didn't take time seriously enough. Every person on this planet gets the same 24 hours. The question is, what are you doing with yours? You don't have to change your whole life in a day. That's not the point. But you do have to stop pretending that how you spend your time doesn't matter. Because it does. It matters more than almost anything else. How you spend your time is how you spend your life. There's no separating the two. That's the reality. You are defined not just by what you say you value, but by what you give your time to. So take a hard look. What does your time say about you? And here's the truth. Time will either become your ally or your enemy. If you use it well, if you rise to meet its demands, if you invest in each moment with attention and intention, it will multiply your efforts. It will reward you. You'll look back in 5 years and be astonished at what you've built. But if you squander it, if you treat it casually, if you let it pass you by, it will leave you behind. And when you finally look up, you'll realize that you didn't just waste hours. You wasted yourself. The people who achieve real lasting change in their lives aren't necessarily the smartest or the most gifted. They're the ones who understand the cost of a second. They're the ones who treat time like currency, like it's limited and precious and not to be thrown away on distractions and avoidance. They respect time, and in return, time respects them. It sharpens them. It strengthens them. It shapes them into someone worthy of the life they desire. And this is why every second matters. Not because each one is dramatic, but because each one is decisive. Each second holds a vote for who you are and who you're becoming. Are you the kind of person who shows up, who finishes what they who keeps promises to others and to themselves? Or are you the kind of person who delays, who drifts, who waits for time to be more generous than it ever promised to be? So if you want to live a life of purpose, if you want to become someone of character, of depth, of real substance, start with time. Don't ask what time can do for you. Ask what you're doing with your time, because it's watching, it's measuring, it's responding, and one day, sooner than you think, it will deliver its verdict. Not in words, but in the kind of person you've become.